Welcome to Backwoods Pursuit. I'm Gabe Garish, and today we're going to take a look at the Kite Optics APC Stabilized binoculars. These are the ED version, so the upgraded glass, and they do have a number of features and things that are different than the non-ED version of these binoculars. So we're going to look at 5 things in this video. First, we're going to look at the unique features of the 50mm ED glass version here. Then we'll look at just how much optical improvement you get over the non-ED version of these binoculars. Then we're going to take a look at the differences between the models, the original stabilized, APC stabilized, versus the APC stabilized with the ED glass and the upgraded processor. Then we'll go over when I would use and when I wouldn't use these stabilized binoculars, and particularly the 18x50s here. I was able to use these over the course of the last hunting season and got a lot of really good feedback from in the field use on how these performed in various situations. I'll bring you that information. And then finally, the things I liked and didn't like about these after using them for the last hunting season. Appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. I'll put links to all that down in the description, as well as a link to these Kite APC Stabilized binoculars so you can check them out for yourself. Let's get started. All right, now first let's take a quick look at some specs before we dive into those 5 categories. First, the weight here. These come in at 35.8 ounces, verified on my scale of 35.7 actually, so they're doing a good job of advertising the actual weight here, actually a little bit over versus what my scale said, so that's always nice to see. Now the field of view on these, these are the 18s here, that comes in at 61 degrees apparent, and that translates to 195 feet at 1,000 yards. So for stabilized and for an 18x binocular, that's really quite good. That's one of the things that typically plagues stabilized binoculars is a narrow field of view, so good to see that there. Now eye relief with the 18s here, you've got 15.5 millimeters, and with the 14x, you've got 18 millimeters of eye relief, so a little bit better with the 14s. As you can imagine, that lesser magnification gives you a little bit more eye relief in that case, but still not bad on the 18s, and as I use them, I didn't notice that to be an issue whatsoever. I don't wear eyeglasses, but I did not have any issues with eye relief whatsoever with these binoculars. Now the battery life you get with these, the 50s here, the ones with the ED glass come in 2 different options. You can either pick up a model that carries and uses AA batteries, or like this one is the lithium ion rechargeable battery. So there's just a slight difference there. The AA version gives you 38 hours of use, whereas the lithium ion rechargeable gives you 30 hours of use. Not a big difference, but depending on what you want to do, you save a little bit of money going with the AA version. Now size-wise, you've got just under 10 inches at 9.84, and the width here at 5.9 inches. So they are larger binoculars, but again, they're 18x50s, so you do have a larger binocular. Now, some of the unique features with these specifically here in the 50mm with the ED glass. Of course, they have ED glass, which is an upgrade over the previous and the still made Kite APC stabilized binoculars, but you just get an upgrade in the optical system here with the 50mm, and that comes again in 14 and 18x. Another interesting change here is that, like I mentioned just a minute ago, these come as an option of either rechargeable or can be used with AA, so you have to pick which model you want when you're ordering. You're going to save a little bit of money going with AA, but having rechargeability is nice to have out in the field so you're not packing extra batteries. You can just recharge that with a power bank or whatever you might have with you. They do last a very long time and don't need to recharge much at all, 30 hours, but that is something that is unique about these. Another thing is that they have inverted eye cups. So here you can see the previous, the standard APC model without the ED glass. The eye cups here change and adjust here in a downward from the body, whereas it's the opposite of that on the 50mm, it's up above the body. So this took a little bit of getting used to, and it almost kind of makes them look like a spaceship or whatnot. We were joking about that out in the field, but they are very effective and very comfortable. It's just a different look than what you're used to in binoculars, certainly. Again, with this solid body too, they're on the bigger side, absolutely. Now they do have the APC again, of course, as is in the name. So you flip that lever on, and then when you bring the binocular level and you're in use, that turns on, and then we put it in a vertical position, stick it in your bino harness, it's going to turn itself off, which is a really nice feature. So you're not flipping that off and on constantly. You can just leave that on, flip it up and use it, and then when you're done, put it away and it turns itself off. So definitely a battery saver there, and one of the things I really like about these Kite APC stabilized binoculars. Another unique thing here is that Kite added a 1/4-20 threading here on the bottom, so you can put your Arca plate on the bottom here and use these off of a tripod. That's one of the things that I didn't like about all of the stabilized binoculars that I had tested up to date, because when you're not wanting to hold these, say for a long glassing period, if you're mule deer hunting or whatnot out here in the West, and you want to be able to put those on a tripod and just relax your arms, those didn't have that ability, whereas these ones do that now, which I really do like, and I used that quite a bit when I was out on mule deer hunts here this year. Put these on a tripod, and that was very, very effective. Now, if you do go with the rechargeable model here, your recharging port is right there. It covers up nicely with the little rubber seal there. I did find that that came off from time to time, so I had to push it back on there. As you can imagine, just in and out of a bino harness, that did get bumped once in a while, but for the most part, it stayed put all right. But that is something that was different about these. And of course, 50 millimeter versus either 30 or 42 millimeter with the APC models. Now, as far as optical performance difference of these versus the APC model, the standard model, or even the SIG models that we tested here alongside the Kite APCs in our other review previously, what I found is that that ED glass made a really big difference in the optical performance of these. There was better edge-to-edge clarity, significantly and noticeably better. We had better overall color contrast and color rendition, which was noticeable, especially out glassing in the field looking for mule deer a long ways away. Just did a better job of giving you the colors you needed when you're trying to pick apart a hillside. Also noticed significantly better image resolution overall. That's no surprise with that ED glass and upgraded optical system over the APC, but I really did notice that in the field, putting them side by side. You could really pick out the differences that you get with the ED glass. Makes a big difference there. Finally, you did get a little bit better low light performance, albeit it's not a perfect comparison because you've got an 18 by 50, whereas here you had a 16 by 42. So not an ideal comparison there. We didn't have the same configuration, but I will say even with the 18, the extra magnification, they did outperform the 16 by 42s, and significantly so. So take that for what it's worth. Not a perfect comparison, but there was that difference, and I would attribute that to the ED glass. Now let's take a look at the differences between the 50 millimeter and the 42 millimeter. Now I didn't want to include the 30s because obviously there's a vast difference between a 50 millimeter binocular and a 30, but just for sake of you being able to see the size difference between these two and some of the feature differences, I wanted to put these side by side for you. As you can see, you've got about 7¼ inches in height here and 9.84 inches here. So quite a bit bigger size-wise. You can see they are quite a bit wider here as well, 5.9 inches in width. And what that really means in real world is that these are going to require a larger bino harness. The one that I used to have these out in the field just barely would fit these in there, and it was a tight fit and not a good fit. So you have to upgrade to a larger harness if you want to use that, and that's going to be the case a lot of times if you go with a 50 millimeter binocular anyway, so no surprise there. Another difference here, of course, 50 versus 42 millimeter, but you have the option here with rechargeable or AA, whereas you only have the AA option with the APC in the 42 and the 30 millimeter options. Same configuration with the focus knob and the power option here. Almost identical there, but one thing that is very different is the inverted eye cups, like I mentioned a minute ago. That is kind of different, and getting used to that is a little bit awkward. You know, when I first grabbed these, I had them upside down most of the time and would realize that I had them upside down. But you get used to it after a little bit, no big deal. But it was interesting that that's inverted versus the previous model. Now, one last difference here, other than the optical differences that we just talked about a minute ago, is that the 42s or the non-ED glass comes in 42 and 30 millimeter sizes. Within the 30, you've got a 10 by 30 and a 12 by 30. In the 42, you've got 12 and 16 by 42, and then in the 50 millimeter you have either 14 or 18 by 50. So some different configurations. It's tough to compare those exactly across the board because they are in different configurations, but the best we can do here is put those side by side for you so you can see the actual differences in the size, because that can be really tough to do in pictures and when you're looking at them online and whatnot. But other than sizes and obviously the glass and optical performance, the build and the configuration is nearly identical, save for that inverted eyepieces. Now, as far as when I would use these and when I would not, it's kind of a subjective question, subjective answer here, but my feedback after using these this year on a number of different hunts, different types of hunts, deer and elk out west here, is that I use these more than I thought that I was going to. These are the 18s, but I also found that I used the 12s and even the 16s at times, but the 10s and the 12s were super useful as well, depending on the terrain and the country I was hunting. When I was mule deer hunting here, we were covering some really big country, and I found these 18s to be really, really useful. I also found that the ability to put these on a tripod eliminated the need to take a second pair of binoculars like I like to do at times if I want to be able to glass off of a tripod for a long period of time, because I don't want to be holding these for that long. Having that on, that ability to do that, and having that ability to put an Arca plate on there and just put that on my tripod and use these really was a game changer. Now, because they're 18x, you don't necessarily need that much all the time, so I did find myself at times carrying a pair of 10x or whatnot for some of the up close glassing we were doing, but being able to put these on a tripod was a huge improvement. And one specific situation was that the wind was really blowing hard, and we were glassing some basins about 2.5 miles away as the crow flies, and the wind was blowing so hard that the tripod itself was shaking with had a little bit of wind shake in there, and just enough to make it difficult to glass. So I flipped the stabilization on after putting these on a tripod, and it eliminated that wind shake and made for a perfect viewing experience, something that you just couldn't get without that tripod adaptability in there. So I really, really appreciated that. So at the end of the day, basically, if I'm going to be glassing inside of or outside of a mile, then I certainly want something like these with the 18s. If it's going to be inside a mile, I might go with, say, a 12, maybe a 16. But the stabilized is something I used a lot more than I thought I was going to. And the bottom line is you're able to spot more animals without having to sit down and set up on your tripod. Sometimes that's the best way to do it, certainly, and I still do that a lot. But sometimes not having to do that and running ridges, covering a lot of country is the best way to go. And if that's the case, these stabilized are really tough to beat. All right, now finally, what I liked and didn't like about these Kite Optics. First thing I liked here is the optical performance is excellent. Really big improvement over the APC. I really enjoyed that and found that it was plenty good, even coming from NL peers. The optical performance was plenty good to not really find myself really disappointed all the time. Certainly, I can notice the difference. The NL peers are really tough to beat. And certainly my preference when I'm set up on a tripod and able to glass that way. But if that's not the case and I'm running and gunning, the optical performance here was absolutely phenomenal, and I really enjoyed that. I also really liked how they're not terribly heavy for such a large binocular. 18 by 50s are historically really heavy at just under 36 ounces, 35.8 I believe it was. Not too bad. They are bulky though. You'll notice they're really tall, really wide. You have to get that bigger binocular harness. So something I didn't care for on these is that size. I really liked the ability to put them on a tripod. Talked about that already, so I won't belabor that point, but that is a game changer for me personally. I liked having the ability to recharge, or if you prefer that AA, they're going to operate the same way, have the AA batteries go right in there, but I chose the rechargeable version because that was appealing to me, not having to worry about batteries potentially dying out in the field. And I typically have a power bank with me so I can give them a quick recharge if I need to anyways. So really like that. Now another thing I liked is I did notice that the improvement in the software and the stabilization was better than the APC. It seemed like it was more smooth. I do have less of that feeling like you're in a boat or whatnot, and I noticed that when I first started using stabilized binoculars. It is much better with these, and I noticed a better stability, a better stabilization software in this. It's upgraded from the 2.0 to the 3.0 here. I personally noticed the difference using them out in the field. Not a huge difference, but there was a noticeable difference in the smoothness of the stabilization. Now, a couple of things that I didn't care for with these Kite APC stabilized binoculars. Probably the main thing is their overall size. They are nearly 10 inches long and nearly 6 inches in width. That's a large binocular, and you have to pick up a larger binocular harness if you're going to use these and be able to close that harness. So didn't care for that. I feel like there may be a way to make them a little bit smaller, and I wish that they were a little bit smaller. The APC models are larger than the SIGs already, and then these are significantly larger on top of that. So didn't really care for that. The inverted eye cups is just a little different, a little odd. They are what they are, but they almost look like a spaceship here, a Star Trek spaceship or something. So that was kind of our joke. They look like they're spaceship binoculars, but they're pretty stinking good as in their optical resolution, optical quality. One thing I didn't care for here is, like the other ones, the focus wheel is a little bit finicky. It's not bad by any stretch, but it is a little bit spongy, so it can be hard to fine tune at times. And then you add in that these are 18x binoculars, it can be a little bit of a challenge sometimes to fully resolve an image, although you certainly can get there. It's not too bad, but it's, again, a little bit spongy there. So that is the Kite APC stabilized binoculars in the 18x50 with the ED glass, the upgraded glass. They are quite good. They are much better than I expected, and they're much better than the APC than I expected them to be as well. Again, I used these for an entire season, mule deer hunting and elk hunting, and really came to love them and what they offer in their ability to resolve an image, their low light performance for an 18x binocular, as well as their color contrast and rendition and their edge-to-edge clarity. They do an excellent job. Even if they are odd looking, they're a great binocular, great stabilized binocular, and the improved stabilization does a great job as well. If you have any questions, love to help you. Drop them down in the comment section. I'd love to help you if we can. Put a link to these again in the description as well. Check them out for yourself. Thanks for watching, and we will see you next time.